Okay, so let's just go back to screen share. Good. New share, make sure you can see this. Cool. Okay. So yeah, that's really, really important that basically what you disclose to your doctor is held in confidentiality. And it is because I've tried for good reasons over the years to get some information around medical records, particularly if someone's been killed, and it's not that easy. You need a high court order. And it goes on to say, most especially, must I tread with care in matters of life and death. If it's given me to save a life, all thanks, but if it's also within my power to take a life, this awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play at God. So that's really important, and I put that in reading for obvious reasons. Just forgive me for 1 second. Yeah, cool. Okay, so moving on from that, and I want to make it clear, and most of you heard me say this very, very clearly, that we are blessed in this country with a most fantastic National Health Service. And I think we all know that. I mean, it has problems, but this is one of the things that I wanted to point out is I belong to a military club in central London. I was there last week, where they record on this most beautiful oak paneling people that get the George Cross. And the last one to be engraved on that is the National Health Service, who do a fantastic job. So I'm not here to, in any shape or form, knock the NHS. And, you know, without putting too fine a point of it, I'm sure we can all give good stories. So for obvious legitimacy reasons, there's going to be reference to serial killings and child murders, just so you are aware of that, for health and safety reason. This is quite a good definition, I feel, for we're going to talk about health serial killers today. I will be going over some ground that most of you might have seen, but it's just to contextualize what we're going to talk about this evening. So any type of employee in the healthcare system who uses their position to murder at least 2 patients in 2 separate incidents with a psychological capacity for more killing. So I think that's quite a good definition to look at the types of people that we're going to be looking at this evening. Or if you're in Canada, I strongly suspect afternoon, yeah, because you're behind us. So we're just going to go very, very quickly through this, and I'm going to bring in something fairly new, is to be aware that the definition of a serial killer, so far as this country and the FBI is concerned, is different. So this is our definition. What is a serial killer? Generally speaking, that criminologists categorize someone that has committed at least 3 separate and distinct murders over a period greater than 30 days. The FBI have got a different definition. They say it's 2 or more people over a period of 20 days. So therefore it follows in terms of measurement that the Americans have more serial killers than us. And a lot of the material that I've brought you over the years comes from the Center for Research for Serial Killers at Florida State University, where I'm what's known as a reader there. And you can see some of these. I've not seen this before, actually. I've just homed in on this. That's quite interesting. I've never seen that before. There's Ian Brady, but Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, who recently died, has put with love from Peter. And that is quite interesting, the amount of people, particularly women, that will patronize these core celebs, go and see them in prison and everything like that. A very, very interesting psychology. I'm just going to go through this very, very quickly, just so you're up with the sort of latest speak. We know about serial killer. A mass murder is the killing of 3 or more people at the same time at the same place. So I was up in Manchester a few weeks ago when there was that terrible thing with Ariana Grande at Manchester Arena where those people died. A spree killing goes 3 or more people within a period of 30 days. And all these terms are known as multi-side. If you're new, and this is something that I'm very strong on, is you just need to be aware of this, is that quite often when we're looking at serial killers, and of course today we're looking at health serial killers, there is a surge in which the killer becomes the focus. There is a relentless effort to look for a clue in their past which might explain why they become a serial killer. That is a very, very dangerous approach to take because quite often you can find that individuals will kill for no particular reason. And in the case of a guy called Donald Gaskins, would you believe, I can't believe that, he had a dual, he was a serial killer, but he had 2 MOs. People that he disliked, he would murder, and people he didn't like in business. So he had this like twin track, which I've never seen before. So you do need to be very careful. And as students of psychology, yes, often there might be a trigger, but it's a dangerous route to take. You all know this, and I'm going to be very, very quick with this. There are 4 principal reasons why people commit murder. And this is adopted from one of the books that I consider really as a manual or even a Bible, if you like. There's 4 reasons why people kill. The first one is visionary, and I think this is very much typical of Jack the Ripper, for instance. They kill sequentially because of visions or voices that command that he, or in this particular gig that I'm doing this evening, she, and often they are psychotic. They're getting some message from a deity to go out and commit murder. Moving to the right there, missionary, you see they will kill because he has defined victims to be bad or undesirable people. And that's where misogyny creeps in, the hatred of women, particularly with prostitutes. And that is what I believe Peter Sutcliffe was trying to do. And also Steve Wright, just down the road from where I live here in Ipswich, is trying to purge the streets of prostitutes or sex workers. Hedonistic, very, very worrying. The bottom left bit there, they kill because they enjoy it. Often sex is a compelling and dominant force in his murders. And that's actually quite interesting because I use the word he here. We know that the majority of male serial killers are hunters, and they will go out and kill often away from the territory or anchor points, as a offender profiler will say, away from where they live, work or socialize. And so far as females are concerned, the female serial killers, they will kill, and they are gatherers, so they will kill much more locally to where they live. The party is usually known to them, and their main reason for doing it is financial reasons. And on the right hand side, power and control, kills because he is gratified by his ability to hold the fate of someone else in his hands. And there has been lots of serial killers that have been interviewed post conviction that say that this is the most exciting thing they've ever had, and that is really a mirror of the words that came out of Ted Bundy's mouth, one of the most written about serial killers. Just a bit of a background. So what you want to know is it on the increase, is it static, or is it decreasing? And this is a really, really important question. And what I want you to think about now is this, is do you trust doctors? It's that simple. And this is not meant to be a nasty question, but I think during the next, 45 minutes have we got left now, the relationship since Harold Shipman, and we're going to look at him later, between us and doctors in general has changed. I don't know about you guys, I'm certainly a lot more challenging now about stuff that I'm asked to do, tablets I'm asked to take. If healthcare killing is on the increase criminologically and psychologically, we need to be asking the question, why is that? The other question to look at is the global picture and not just the United Kingdom. And of course, I've had the opportunity to study a lot of health serial killers across the planet. So exactly what is the position? Now, again, this worries me, is I think as we get more technical, people get more technical. Just think what we're doing this evening. 20 years ago, we wouldn't be doing this. This would be the province of psychologists and the province of police. But as we've got more technical, we can bring this sort of material to everyone. My worry here, as you're going to see in several cases, in particular Shipman and some others that we're going to look at, they were convicted for X amount of murders, but there was a strong suspicion that they had killed far more people than they were convicted of. It is very, very difficult to measure. In other words, to do a raw count of how many people we believe in this country have been murdered by healthcare professionals. And here is a very recent example, some research I was looking at. This guy here called Petr Zelenka, a male nurse, he killed his patients in the Czech Republic in 2006, and it wasn't widely reported outside of Eastern Europe, and required us to have a number of articles translated into English. Now, the Centre for Research for Serial Killing has got 3,500 serial killers that I can research, together with a complement of about 17 or 18,000 victims. So it's really, really interesting to look at. But there are countries that we know, for instance, China doesn't input into it, one of the biggest countries in the world, nor does Russia. So it's very, very difficult to get a true picture. So we're going to look at the why. And I think for you guys, and certainly for me as a psychologist, that is the big, big question. Excuse me, this is really interesting. We look at the Czech here. I've got a most delicious Czech beer here, which I'm going to quickly toast you with. What do you think, Jane? Paul, drinking on duty. Okay, so let's just have a look at this. And what I like to do is, rather than me blaring on, is a blank screen there, is just to have a quick think, and do feel free to whack this into the chat box here. In fact, I see some chats going on here, which is cool. It's just how do they commit offences? Not the why, is let's look at how do they commit offences. So I've got some answers here, but just give your mind a quick exercise and either think, if you're here for the first time, there's no compunction to do anything. I want you to relax and enjoy criminal psychology. But if you want, you can, please do feel free to slap stuff into the chat box. So how do they commit offences? How do they do that? Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Yeah. What Jenny's pitched in said interference with medication, and that is going to be the first case study that we're going to look at shortly. That will show that it was interference with it. So let's just have a look. Because they can. That's the first thing to say. I quite actually like this expression, because they can, and that's because they've got good access to victims. Yeah, and if you have been an inpatient, I've been an inpatient a few times in hospital, you put your total trust, don't you, in these people that are looking after you. They hide under the umbrella, and I think this has changed. Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Tampering with life-saving equipment. They hide under the umbrella of the doctor, nurse, etc. Delusion And I say delusion only when we're talking about people that are committing an offences of respectability. This here is beggars belief, and it's something I didn't realise until a few months ago. The patient dies at home and they're attended by a physician recently. There's no post-mortem, or certainly that was the case with Shipman. And yeah, Charlotte, that's one of the main things there. Insulin is a very, very good agent to murder people. So there's no post-mortem. So in other words, let's just say you've got a relative that is terminally ill and they've been seen recently by a physician, a doctor. They probably, or hitherto, they wouldn't have a post-mortem. And that allowed the likes of Shipman to get away with it. Yeah, to get away with it. I've been reading, and I'm going to show you this at the end. There were 5 public inquiries into Harold Shipman, and I thought they were exceptionally well done. And you can read them, they're on the net. What I suggest you do is to read the executive summary, otherwise you're going to be reading this stuff for ages. But Dame Janet Smith, who did all 5, the High Court judge, she suggested loads of recommendations. In other words, there should be a post-mortem, and if not, at least a blood sample taken. It took nearly 20 years to implement these recommendations. 20 years. Well, I don't know whether that's to do with money or whatever, but it's clear that we're not taking that seriously. Access to medicines and power and control, as will unfold in a minute. So the first thing to do is just, if you're looking at any criminal psychology or offenders, there are 3 principal reasons. There's going to be biological reasons. And one of the things that I'm looking at the moment, which is a fascinating study, is looking at the relationship or the correlation between head injuries and serial killing. And there is emerging evidence that there is actually a correlation between the two, which I find interesting. So that would be a biological way of looking at murder. Secondly, the psychological way. Why did the person do it? And then thirdly, what was their upbringing? Who did they mix with? How is it that they started committing offences? So there's 3 principal reasons. This here we can look at, and this is looking at very much the why. And one of the reasons that health serial killers have said collectively over the years, and this is from a psychologist called Yorker and other people, and this was written, what I'm showing you is not my work, from 2006. They will have mercy or compassion, ill thought or erroneous. So what they will do is to bump that person off because they feel sorry for them. Who knows? I don't know, and I talk from personal experience. I remember my poor old dear dad, terminal cancer, and he was in a hospital, and the doctor said, I'm going to go and give him some morphine to reduce his pain. I walked in there 2 minutes later and he was dead. How many doctors, I don't know, will give an extra bit of morphine, or diamorphine, to put that person out of their misery. So this is, again, this is from Yorker, demanding patience. Yeah, demanding patience. I think most of us on here have got young children. You know what it's like when they really, you're at the end of your tether. Yeah, and that is very, very difficult. That's certainly something I found quite difficult when the kids go berserk. So demanding patience, that is another reason why health serial killers will put the person out of their misery. The other one that's been cited before post-conviction is freeing up beds. Who would have believed that one? I killed that person because I needed a bed. Material gain, as was the case with Shipman, he was eventually caught, and we're going to see the actual will that was written out. He was eventually caught by forging someone's will. It's quite well done as well. I'll tell you what, this is one of the worst slides I've ever done. And the other one is called Munchausen's syndrome by proxy. And let me explain that to you. Let's say that I'm suffering from, I need attention. So what I will do, I suppose I could come on and do a criminal psychology lecture. That would help. But Munchausen's syndrome is where people present themselves, often at a doctor's surgery, because they want attention. They're not ill at all. They do need attention. And certainly in the police service, there was a raft of people that would perpetually go into a hospital. Nothing wrong with them, but they just were seeking attention, attention-seeking behaviour. Where it's by proxy, that means that often a mother or father will present their child as being ill. And in some cases, they will add to that illness because they are seeking attention. So the child is merely the agent to get that attention. And that's exactly what Nurse Beverly Aylett was doing. She was presenting children that were suffering, and that was at her hand. And then she was using an antidote to make them better and then killing them. Munchausen's syndrome by proxy. Very, very sensitive. And I, you know, a couple of my friends have had to get high court orders to deploy hidden cameras in wards or rooms to actually catch the parents doing it. This next bit is fascinating, and as a student of psychology, this is a staple, if you like, and this is something I want to explain to you. This was a very unethical experiment which was carried out in 1961. Stanley Milgram's family, some of them were murdered in the Holocaust, and some of them had survived. He conducted the following experiment. What I want you to do is to see at the bottom of the screen, this is an electric shock machine, or so we all thought. What happened at this machine, excuse me, was attached to what we now know as an actor with electrodes, and the person involved in the experimenter had to carry out an experiment where it was teacher and learner. The actor that was hooked up to this machine but had no electric volts whatsoever going out there was the learner. The teacher was involved in the experiment, and the teachers were people selected to take part in this experiment at Stanford University. So what would happen is that the actor would be asked some questions, and if they got it wrong, they would slide this switch down and administer a small electric shock. They weren't, because the whole thing was a sham, but the person that was administering the electric shock believed they were doing it. And as the shock became more severe, the actor was starting to shout, and the original experiment said hollow, emulating the fact that they were being given electric shocks. But it was an actor, it wasn't true. When they got here, some of the people involved in the experiment said, I'm not doing this because this is causing pain. However, the experiment was all around obedience to authority. The man in the white coat that was supervising that said the experiment requires that you continue. And so it did. And what happened is merely because a person in authority was telling them to continue, they were prepared to administer electric shocks, or so they thought they were, up to 25,000 volts. as a sideshow, when I was teaching mathematics, I was teaching this in a A-level psychology class. And what I did is I put on a white lab coat and we taught a lesson in the hall where there was a load of kids that walked past. And I said to the students, the next time a female student comes through here, I'm going to ask her to give me her handbag. And in 70% of the cases, the students handed over that handbag merely because I was a teacher or a person in a white coat. Obedience to authority, and that is why we are obedient to doctors. And I don't even know whether they wear white coats these days. Probably not. But do you see here, that is so important. So we've taken it for granted and we're obedient to doctors. That's why this experiment is so important, and it was a turning point in our trust of doctors. This, guys, is the drives right to the heart of the flags that would indicate that someone that is working as a doctor, a nurse, or a healthcare professional could start committing serious offences. They're called red flags. Again, not my work. So let's just have a quick run through them. They move from one hospital to another. Every single case study, well, there's 3 case studies that I showed, they moved from one hospital to another. When there was some suspicion, they moved on. Secretive, difficult personality relationships, that can also be called psychopathy in some instances, because psychopaths really find it difficult to form concrete and long relationships. History of mental instability or depression. Beverly Aylett had this very strange thing that when she was a nurse in training, if she got upset, she would smother her own feces around her own wall in a bedroom. Very, very strange behaviour for someone that's coming into this caring profession. They will predict when someone will die. I hope no one does that with me, but this is what they do, is they will predict when someone dies. And of course, I don't want to get too biblical, but it's only God that knows that when we're going to die. You know, even doctors, they say you've got X amount to live, they don't know. They make odd comments, claims about them being jinxed. You know, 3 or 4 patients have died under my care. They like to talk about death and odd behaviour. They will act oddly when someone actually dies. This is taking holistically as many case studies as possible to see how similar some of these variables are. Obviously, this speaks for itself. Higher instances of death on his or her shift. Seems inordinately enthused about his or her skills. Attention-seeking behaviour again. Makes inconsistent statements when challenged about death. Prefers night shifts because there's fewer colleagues around to inspect or monitor or challenge their behaviour. And they might be associated with incidents at other hospitals. And quite often they would have been involved in other criminal activities. And then moving on, because there are some more, makes colleagues anxious or suspicious. They crave attention. We've already discussed this. They try to prevent others checking on his or her patients for obvious reasons, so they don't get caught. And they will hang around during investigations of death. And some of you know, because of what I've told you, in cases where there's been a murder, in 10% of cases, the person responsible for the murder for outside scene searches will interject themselves into the search. And that is why it's important to take everyone's name when they're helping the police. Often in possession of drugs at their home or in a locker. They lie about personal information, particularly if they've got a criminal offence. And I've got to say, up until 2 years ago, there was absolutely nothing stopping the Shipman and Aylett starting up again. In possession of books about poison or serial murder, has got disciplinary problems, as Ailill did, and they appear to have a personality disorder. They've got a substance abuse problem, as Harold Shipman did. And this is after a really, I'm going to show you the book at the end, just in case you want to get it out of the library. And this woman here, Ramsland, is probably one of the world's leading authorities on what we're discussing this evening. This, we need to be very, very careful. In this country, we have trial by jury. This is coming up in the fast lane. It's being tried next month. And I think it's going to get a lot of press attention. So we need to be careful about commenting on the evidence, which I'm not going to do. She's going to face trial in October, charged with murdering 5 boys and 2 girls, and the attempted murder of 5 boys and 5 girls at the Countess of Chester Hospital. And there is a picture of her. There's a picture of the hospital. The early signs are, looking at what I've read, is that she's going to blame the system. And so it's got absolutely nothing to do with her. And the trial date is set for next month. Having said that, you're probably aware that trials, jury trials, because of barristers going on strike and also the lockdown, have been put back. So that's so much for Lucy Letby. Now let's then move into some case studies to try and bring to the fore some of the things we've discussed. And Charlotte puts up a very good question here. Wouldn't it be less suspicious or an easier defence to do this in the day when a hospital is the busiest? Yeah, very good point here, with inpatients and having to do with medicines at night, when the wards are asleep, when you think you'll be more spotted. It depends. Look, that's a great question. And it depends on their MO. How are they actually murdering these people? And Kerry goes on to say, I'm shocked there's not more deaths or on wards. When I was in hospital, I was an orthopedic work, and they employ a lot of nurses, as English is not good. And of course, if there's someone has a hyper or hypo diabetic thing, that can be difficult. So let's look at this chap here called Charles Cullen. Big case study. Just excuse me while I just pause for air. Charles Cullen. He was a nurse. This absolutely beggars belief, this case, in the US, and he was convicted of murdering 40 patients. Some people suggest that this was just 10% of what he was responsible or culpable for. So forgive this slide, but again, it comes back to the excellent question or the statement made by Charlotte here, is that he's now 62. We have to take cognizance of this next statement. He was the youngest of 8 children. One wonders, I haven't got 8 children, 3 was enough for me, but one wonders how much attention and love you can give to the 8th one. He tried to take his own life aged 9, which is very worrying. He tried to take his life on at least 20 occasions. So he joined the US Navy, serving from 1978 to 1984. And as soon as he came out, he joined the School of Nursing in New Jersey. And he marries in 1987, has 2 daughters. And he starts killing straight away by adding drugs to intravenous bags. Insulin, as you said, digoxin, heart medicine, or epinephrine, which is adrenaline. And of course, that makes the heart beat a lot quicker. You lob a load of those in with someone like me, for my metabolism and my age, you stick that in a bag, and that's going to probably give me a heart attack. So carrying on with this, he left his first hospital in 1992, and the management found contaminated IV bags. His wife files for divorce, citing domestic abuse. And there's some suspicion there leading on from that the domestic abuse was actually down to the fact that he felt guilty about murdering these people and took it out on his wife. When we looked at those red flags that came from that psychologist Camplin, we see that they moved from hospital to hospital unopposed. You would think, wouldn't you, that if you are a nurse or a doctor, that in this country you were given usually a number, often by Royal College of Nursing by way of warrant, and whatever body it is now, General Medical Council, I believe, or something like that, that moderates doctors, you're given a number. So one would have thought with these days, with tech, it's quite easy to monitor people going from place to place, and that should raise some suspicion. So he was found looking at patients' records of those not in his care, and in 2002, a stash of drugs with no recreational or recreation value were found under a dustbin, and he was sacked for theft. And at this time, he'd already been murdering people, and there was no thought, no joined up writing to look at whether he'd been actually involved in killing people. In 2003, he starts a job at this Somerset Medical Centre where he commits most of his offences. And this is one of the points that I want to make with serial killers. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or rewarding someone is once they've got away with one, that is almost self-reinforcement to continue with another one. It's like me with a bag of sweets. You take one, don't you? And before, I don't know, probably not with you guys, before what you know where you are, you're down the bottom of the bag. Off sweets at the moment, sadly. Case studies. This is fascinating, Beverly Aylett. And what I want you to do is to have a look at some of the pictures that I've inserted in this case study. Her background, very worrying. As a child, extreme attention-seeking behaviour, again, including the wearing of bandages over fictitious wounds. Well, I don't know about you, I've got a young grandson and we've got a doctor's kit, and he loves putting on those bandages, but one would expect when he's 3 or 4, he ain't going to do that. We all do that. Spent lots of time in hospitals, Munchausen syndrome here, seeking medical attention, culminating in the removal of a healthy appendix, and doctor hopping, and also self-harm. She trained as a nurse, and I've already outlined that to you. Very bizarre behaviour. Her boyfriend at the time said she was manipulative, aggressive, deceptive, claiming rape and false pregnancy, and this is evidence of psychopathy. Charlotte says, does the fact that the changing technology help? Before everything was paper written prescription, now it's electronic. Yeah, it does help. It does help. And the reason I know is one of my best mates, ex-detective sergeant, was responsible for writing the software and giving the training around a particular new system for the NHS. Failed many nursing examinations, and as the hospital was hugely understaffed, she was offered a short-term contract. There were low levels of supervision, hence her criminal behaviour went unchecked for so long. Basically here, this is where she starts the proxy bit by presenting children, saying, look how well that I'm doing with their care. This child has had some sort of trauma, and I've brought the child back from the brink. And you can see different things there. 11-year-old boy, 1991 post-mortem, failed to find a cause, although epilepsy was officially blamed. And then 1-year-old admitted, just imagine if this is terrible, this patient went into cardiac arrest in the same bed as the previous victim. There was a strange puncture hole underneath the armpit. There was an air bubble, and there was no investigation. Look there at her face. What does that tell you? She's in a van. Behaviour continued unchecked, and children continued to have unexplained high volume of insulin in the blood. In addition, a subsequent exhumation shows high levels of both potassium and lignocaine.
Oh,
Checking the nursing logs finally cast suspicion. She was arrested, and I believe, yeah, some nursing logs were found at her house. If I was going to do that, and she did, I don't know about you guys, but I would have made sure that those nursing logs were destroyed. She did not want to, she decided not to do that. Then she's charged with 4 murders, 11 attempts, and in 1993 she's given 13 life sentences, and she's diagnosed with Munchausen's syndrome. Yeah, look, those are some pictures of her. She's really liking this, isn't she? Yeah, I've explained that. Look there again. You can see the female detective that I think she's handcuffed to there, and I put, I'm loving it. She loves the attention. We now move on to Harold Shipman, and some of you are thinking, oh no, he's done that before. I've got some new material to show you. Yeah, he's one of the most prolific serial killers, isn't he, in history? I refuse, and I suppose this is not childish, but I refuse to call him Dr. Harold Shipman, because he did not stick, did he, to that Hippocratic oath. Listen to this. This is the judge that sentences him and says, none of your victims realized that yours was not a healing touch. None of them knew that in truth you had brought her death which was disguised as the caring attention of a good doctor. During the trial, the defense said to the prosecution, and the prosecutor, whose name escapes me, was probably one of the best in the country at the time. The defense said that the jury should not convict because they haven't come up with a motive. So during the closing speech for the Crown, the prosecution said, we're not here to discuss psychological penguin theories or psychology. We're here to look at the facts. And that is so, so important. Shipman was convicted, but to show how plausible it was, outside Leeds Crown Court, there were protests by his patients saying, you've got this all wrong. He's actually a loving man. But because of his psychopathic nature, his relationships with his patients were very shallow. He was able to mask it. So you can see there, when he was 17, he modelled, a psychologist would say, modelled the behaviour of another doctor who gave his mum, poor mum was suffering from breast cancer, I think, and died from it. And he modelled the behaviour of the doctor administering the diamorphine. He comes out very well with his exams, very clever man, becomes a GP, becomes known as Dr. Know-it-all because he won't listen to his peers. His practice was marred by his addiction to pethidine. So when we go back to those red flags, again, there's some evidence that they were addicted. But don't also discount other addictions, addictive personalities, as well as physically addicted to things. Short changes patients to get the drugs. His patients adored him. He was convicted of forging a prescription. He should have been struck off, but he wasn't. And that's because these doctors were held up as some sort of deity. And in 1977, going back to the last slide, 2 years later, he convinces the GMC, as it was then the General Medical Council, that he's fit to practice and should be re-licensed, which he was, but he was licensed, as they say now, to kill, to murder. And there's some other things about him there. I thought, oh yeah, there is his will. Not his will. This is the one that he was caught for forging. And I must admit, when I've looked at this, I thought it was quite good. But the bit that I've put a border around is I was just wondering whether this gives us any insight into his character. And basically, he says, all my estate, money and house to my doctor. My family are not in need, and I want to reward him for all the care he's given me and the people of Hyde. He is sensible enough to handle any problem this may give him. My doctor is, and it gives that. But that is a very well forged document. One thing I've not seen here, it doesn't show this woman's age. That's just come to me. Anyway, there we go. And that, my friends, is it. The two things to look at. This is Catherine Ramsland. We talked about her earlier on inside the minds of healthcare serial killers. It's quite an old volume, and I think you probably better pick it up on the net quite cheaply. And finally, this is the Shipman Inquiry. There were 5 altogether. The first one was called Death Disguised. I think the reports or the inquiry lasted about 3 years from memory. A couple of other things I want to show you, but let's just stop sharing for a minute. We can come back for that. And yeah, I see there's some. Was there a history with Beverly and infants and children, as most killers have a type? I don't know the answer to that. I've not read either way. And do you think he would have? This is the next thing. Do you think he would have killed anyways, even if he was written off as a GP? No, I don't. Because when we went back, is that how do they murder people? He had, if you like, a ready-made market, didn't he? And that was patients. Yes, of course, he may have gone into, I don't know, into IT. Who knows with Shipman? Because no one knows what his MO was, because he took his own life before. Well, Janet Smith, she took 2 psychologists and a psychiatrist to go and interview him to ask him why he did it. He told them to F off. So we don't actually know. But would he killed anyway? Who knows? Certainly wouldn't have been patients, because he wouldn't have had that market, but he had the ability to do that. So I talked about the self-rewarding thing. He might have gone and done it. Technically, he had supply and demand. Yeah, absolutely. Being a GP. Yeah. Any other questions, guys, around what we've looked at? What about healthcare workers who intentionally withhold care, aka slow codes? I'm afraid you got me there, Chris. Can you just take your microphone off? Just elaborate on that. I'll just get you to Chris to. It's good to see you, by the way. I'll just get you to take your microphone off and just elaborate on that. The question you've posed is, what about healthcare workers who intentionally withhold care? Yeah, go on. Just tell us a bit more about that. It was just struggling a bit there. Yeah, I think we just got a bit of a problem there. I'd like to know, I think this is a good question. I'd like to know what slow codes are. What about health workers who sorry, microphone's not working. Okay. Yeah, I see. I kind of get what you're saying here, is if I'm a healthcare worker and let's just say I've got to, I don't know, I remember when my father-in-law, when yeah, cool. Yeah, I think I've got the gist of that. So people, withholding incubation. Yeah, very, very interesting. So when my father was, my father-in-law was alive, stayed with us and was getting infirm. So we used to get someone to come along and get him up and sort him out and everything. Jane, great to see you. Yeah. So yeah, that would be a very, very interesting study, wouldn't it? To see how many people there are like that withhold care, knowing that. So it's like murder by omission, isn't it? Really, yeah. So with a murder, you go and kill someone, but in this case, if someone's ill, it's standing back, standing back. Okay, and just yeah, it'd be hard to detect, wouldn't it? How do you prove that one? Yeah, how do you prove that one? Okay, so just to finish off, some of you are aware of this. I think the most important thing is to say thanks very much for coming on. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something slightly different. We've got 5 minutes to go. I'm actually abroad for 3 or 4 weeks. But what I want to do is to prepare something for next time, for next month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys, you've taken the time to come along here, just put in the chat box, is there anything you would like me to talk about for the next one? Yeah, someone asked this. If you've got a burning desire, if I've already got it in the can, then I'll repeat it. But if there's something you want me to look at and research, I'll do it. So just if there is, just put it into the chat box. And there's just 2 more things I want to show you before we depart. So from a criminal and psychological addicts, is there anything else you would like me on the next gig to cover? Because I'll obviously I'll find something, because we do one every month. Okay. Oh, I like this. The psychology of murder for hire. I'm loving that. Yeah, I think we'll go for that. That's a great idea. Thanks, Chris. We will go just for that. Yeah, cool. Nice one. So some of you have seen this. What I want to do is just to show you what's coming up in the fast lane. Yeah, this first one here is going to be held in Chiswick. Getting Away with Murder. Yeah, Getting Away with Murder. So if you're in London next month, have a look at this. Obviously, you can see this. What I'm going to be majoring on is the program that myself and Colin Sutton have been filming, which seem to have gone on for ages and seem to be the hottest days of the year. I'm going to be talking at this event in Chiswick, elaborating more on so it'd be like a preview to what's coming up on the TV. And then just finally, this here you can do. This is coming up. This is myself and Colin Sutton looking at taking a deep dive into Levi Bellfield. go back a bit there, the real good value for money is it's going to be an absolutely awesome event, and we've nearly sold out in Norfolk to actually go live, but we've got a company that is broadcasting it all over the world actually, and is £20 for Sutton to go through right the way through how he investigated this case. Now, some of you have seen a bit, but I want more than that from him, and he's going to be talking about a thing called the DNA delusion. How do we get a virtual Zoom again? Me and Kerry were looking. Well, it's all you need to do is to go onto Eventbrite, put in Manhunter and Mindhunter, and it will come up. Okay, it will come up. Yeah, that's cool. It's 20 quid for basically 3 hours of looking at that. I've also been studying, and I downloaded Colin because Colin's not interested in psychology. I sat him down, and what I wanted to do is to really find out much more about Levi Bellfield than perhaps we've found out. So it should be really, really good, really interesting. We've got a guest halfway through, and it would be really, really cool to see you. And as all we wanted to have a guest, and that guest unfortunately couldn't come. So what we did is Colin and I were practicing what we were going to say. So we signed a book up and sent it to that guest. And I'm sure that guest was well pleased with it, weren't you? Yeah, let's just see. One of you come into the chat box. Let's just have a look. Yeah, so yeah, that's going to be a Zoom, and I hope you find that of real interest. I mean, what's interesting is Colin is actually quite an introvert, and one of the things that I'm going to be challenging him about is some of the very gutsy decisions that he took that I personally wouldn't have done. But I think that will make it quite interesting. Having a really, really long, hard look at Bellfield, and then is looking at how Colin actually carried out the investigation, and it was quite something. Some of you have seen a bit before, but it's going to be in a lot of detail. So yeah, that's coming up in the fast lane, and it'd be great to see you out there. This is a community event as well, so we've got a vet that's just started up in practice. We've got a cancer charity that is there, and we've got a community cafe here in the town that I live at that they do such a good job they need to build. So we're going to take a slice of the money that we get and try and put it into something of use. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much for coming along. It's great to see new people. It's great to see a lot of friends and great customers in the past. And I will bid you a very good night and early evening. Chris, as always, thank you so much for coming in from Canada. Really, really good to see you. There's one or two of you that I'm going to be seeing in the flesh, as it were, next month in Chiswick. Very much look forward to that. Yeah, thanks for your support. Great seeing you. Look after yourselves, guys. Let me just check. Yeah, let me just check there's nothing in the chat box. Really, really good. So I'm off to go and see Coronation Street now. That's what a criminal psychologist does. I can't predict what's going on, but look after yourselves, guys. Nice seeing you. And if your children have gone back to school, I hope they do well. And finally, I'm very proud to say, God save the King. Good night.